I love this city and the river. My early morning walk along the river brings me peace before a busy day at my barber shop at 301 Main Street. On my walk, I watch for the occasional hawk or eagle. The quiet is often broken by noisy rousters unloading package ships that arrive overnight. My name is John Birney. I was a barber here in La Crosse for many years. Now here's a few interesting facts. I carry the name of a famous abolitionist named James Birney. He was a major voice for the anti-slavery movement and the first presidential candidate in 1844 for the Liberty Party. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky in 1834. My wife, Penelope, was born in Louisiana in 1835. We arrived in La Crosse in 1857 with our infant daughter, Mariella. Our family's wealth grew as the city grew. Over the years, I purchased over 10 lots between Sill and Rubley Streets. Today, you call that area the north side of La Crosse. My family lived on 11th and State. On that block, I built 5 separate houses. I imagine you enjoyed this walk too, but probably not in the winter. Oh, that wind blows icy cold off that river, doesn't it? How did John Levy make it through the first winters here in La Crosse? You know, he lived near what is now Front Street. He was only 24 years old. Wow, that sounds so young. John and I were good friends, but we never called each other by our first names. It was always Mr. Birney and Mr. Levy. It wasn't because of formality or because my barbershop was in his hotel or because he was white. It was because we both were named John. It was just too difficult when we were in the same place. Never knew who was being addressed. John Levy gets little credit for the founding of La Crosse. Most of that goes to other men. Yet he came here in 1848 and lived here 70 years later. Some left, others were driven away. John and I often talked about our lives. He was born in London to a Jewish family from Germany. I was a free black man born in Frankfort, Kentucky. John was 14 years older than me, and he came from a different race. But we both understood what fear and hatred could do to people. In fact, John and Elizabeth Williams, the first black people who lived in La Crosse, lived with John and Frederica Levy. They came to La Crosse in 1852 and stayed with the Levies for 5 years. Mr. Levy even helped John opened his own barbershop next to his store. John and Elizabeth eventually built a home of their own in 1857. It was on 4th Street. People in La Crosse called him the gentleman's barber. John Levy owned the entire block of Pearl Street between 2nd and 3rd. This was where he built the Augusta Hotel. He named it after his wife, Frederica Augusta. The hotel had 100 rooms. My barbershop was on the main floor. Can you imagine the business that went through that hotel when La Crosse was a boom town in the 1850s? There were plenty of businessmen who needed shaves every morning in that 100-room hotel. I had an 8-chair barbershop, an unheard of accomplishment in the barber world. It was a very lucrative business. My business partner was Peter Cromwell. We called our shop the Birney and Cromwell Barbershop. His wife Julia and their son Alexander were also barbers there. They worked in along with 4 other barbers and their apprentices. Fire destroyed the Augusta Hotel. On March 19, 1862, the fire began on the roof, and because the Augusta was constructed of clapboard, the entire frame was consumed in 45 minutes. In 5 hours, the structure was gone. All 15 buildings on the block owned by John Levy were gone. There was $71,000 worth of damage and only $10,000 worth of insurance. The guests in the building lost all their belongings, but thankfully, no lives were lost. John Levy became financially devastated. I found that it takes only a few $100s to reset up business. So I ended up walking away still holding on to my wealth. La Crosse learned an important lesson. We were a logging town, but we needed to build with bricks. I also learned to keep my investment properties in different parts of town. A fire burning an entire block can financially ruin a community. My new barbershop in the post office block didn't have the same grandeur as the Augusta Hotel, but it was still an upscale shop. It had 3 chairs, 2 assistant barbers with apprentices, a porter, and bootblacks. I didn't have the volume of customers like before, but the chairs were full every day. The pace was a bit slower, so I had more time with the young men in training. They got a better education, not only with the razor, but with their books. We had a classroom to make sure they all knew how to read and write and how to complete financials for their upcoming business ventures. My wife Penelope was also active in the community. She and the other women of color were members of the Home Literary and Debating Society. This group assisted with family health programs. They also found homes and employment for new arrivals, and they offered education for working girls and women. They also organized the August Ball every year. The August Ball took place on August 1st. It was the celebration of the 1804 Haitian Independence Day. There was a picnic with midday speakers in Levy Park. Later in the evening, there was a dance and fireworks in the park. It was something the black community looked forward to. After 1865, this became known as the Emancipation Day celebration. Later it was called Juneteenth Day. As a result of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, the recruitment of black soldiers became possible. I was proud to recruit the 29th Wisconsin Colored Regiment. Many black soldiers in Wisconsin fought in Louisiana, Indiana, Iowa, and Illinois regiments. We were proud of all who served. You know, Wisconsin was a very progressive state. In 1848, the Wisconsin Constitution granted black men the right to vote. In 1848. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? But there were drawbacks. See, even though black men were given voting rights, there still was confusion. Oftentimes, black men were barred from the ballot box, and this didn't sit well in the community. On October 9th, 1865, a group of us got together in Milwaukee and drafted a new resolution to make the voting box accessible to black men. The referendum failed again. The next month, Ezekiel Gillespie, one of the leaders of our group, attempted to register to vote. He was not allowed, so he sued the Board of Elections. His lawsuit was called Gillespie versus Palmer. The result? The court sided with the voters of Wisconsin. Gillespie won. In 1866, the original referendum of 1849 fully granted black men the right to vote in Wisconsin elections. During the 28 years my family lived here, we had 3 more children: Florence, John Jr., and our youngest, Alice. We were members of Crosse's First Baptist Church. All the children attended school, but Florence was the only one to graduate. She graduated from Crosse High School with the highest honors. I believe you call it Central High School today. After graduation, she moved to Louisville in 1879 and became a teacher at Eastern Colored School. John Jr. attended school in Louisville and went on to Fisk University. Penelope became dissatisfied with life in La Crosse. This may have been heightened by the death of our daughter, Mary Ellen, in 1878. Penelope returned with our son, John Jr., to Louisville in 1884. I stayed on in La Crosse a little while longer. In 1884, Governor Ross of Wisconsin appointed me to represent Wisconsin at the World Industrial and Cotton Centennial Exposition in New Orleans. I shared this honor with F.D. Holton, a millionaire from Milwaukee. I was somewhat disappointed, however, when I was assigned to the Hall of the Colored People and its Industries. I don't know if this is what the governor had intended, or if this was what someone in New Orleans had decided. But in the end, I was impressed. Never before had I been surrounded by so many people of color. There were hundreds of interesting and talented people from all over the United States showing us their wares and skills.
John Birney's influence on La Crosse was profound. Besides being very successful and popular, he was a member of the Old Settlers Association of La Crosse. Their goal was to promote the telling of La Crosse history. This group would later become what is known of today as the La Crosse County Historical Society. John Birney later joined his family in Louisville in 1885. His daughter Florence married and had 1 daughter, Nellie. In later years, Nellie and her mother lived with Penelope and John. John Jr. passed away from typhoid fever in 1890 while attending Fisk University. John Birney passed away in 1917. The family is buried in the historic African American Louisville Cemetery that was established in 1886.